We see the silver hair. We see the blank, porcelain face and the cans of soup that changed the world. We think we know Andy Warhol. But what if I told you the king of pop art was a man built entirely out of shadows? Behind the glitz of the 1960s lies a dark laboratory where human souls were treated like raw material. He was a survivor of childhood trauma who became a master of psychological manipulation. A man so terrified of being seen that he turned himself into a mirror, reflecting a world that was already fading inside. He didn't just paint icons. He diagnosed a condition we are only now starting to feel, an era where authenticity is dead and fame is the only currency that matters. This isn't a biography. This is an autopsy of the man who sold us the vacuum we call modern life. This is the dark factory of Andy Warhol. Before the champagne of Manhattan, there was only coal and shame. Imagine a cramped, drafty tenement in the industrial heart of Pittsburgh. The year is 1930. The air outside is thick with the heavy stench of the mills, and inside, the silence is even heavier. This was the world of Andrew Warhol, the son of immigrant outsiders, a family in a city that only valued muscle and sweat. His father was a miner, a man who spent his life clawing at the dark, deep underground. To be a Rusin immigrant in a city of steel was to be at the bottom of the hierarchy. You were the other. You were invisible. And for young Andy, that invisibility was both a curse and a terrifying premonition. But then his own body turned against him. At the age of 8, Andy was struck by a rare neurological condition. It is a terrifying disorder that makes your limbs move with a life of their own. Imagine lying in a dark bedroom for months, your hands trembling uncontrollably, your skin erupting in pale, sickly blotches. You are a child, and you have become a ghost in your own home. While other boys were out in the soot playing at being men, Andy was hidden away. It was here in the physical discomfort and the trembling of his fingers that a profound obsession was born. He didn't just look at movie magazines. He studied them like Holy Scripture. He spent his childhood trying to disappear into the glossy pages of glamour. Он начал маниакально вырезать фотографии звезд, ища убежище в их совершенстве. 22. He realized that beauty was the only shield against a world that was dirty, poor, and cruel. He hated his appearance. He hated the way he looked. He spent his childhood trying to disappear into the glossy pages of glamour. Have you ever looked in a mirror and felt such a visceral sense of wrongness that you wanted to escape your own skin? That was Andy's reality. Every can of soup he would later paint, every celebrity portrait he would print, was an attempt to replace the fragile Andrew Warhol with something hard, shiny, and untouchable. Because brands don't tremble, brands don't fade, and brands never die. By the time he arrived in New York, Andy had learned the ultimate lesson of survival, camouflage. In a world that demanded strict conformity, Andy lived in a state of permanent, quiet terror. He knew that the world was a predator, and the only way to survive was to become unreadable. He built a mask. He began to wear silver wigs to hide his past. He used heavy makeup to cover the traces of his childhood. He adopted a soft, whispering voice and a passive persona. He became a man who said, "Wow," and "great," but never shared a private thought. But don't be fooled by the passivity. Behind that mask was a genius of marketing. He started as a commercial illustrator, drawing shoes for fashion magazines. He was fast. He was efficient. He was a machine before he ever bought a printing press. He realized that in the mid-20th century, the soul was being replaced by the product. He watched the rise of the television, the supermarket, and the mass-produced dream. He saw that people no longer wanted art that made them think. They wanted art that they already recognized. They wanted the comfort of the familiar. This was the birth of his business art philosophy. He didn't want to be the lonely artist suffering in a garret. He wanted to be the architect of a production line. He wanted to erase the hand of the artist entirely. "I want to be a machine," he famously said, and he meant it. Because a machine has no fear. A machine has no shame. And a machine never feels the deep, crushing loneliness of an immigrant boy who was told he wasn't enough. By 1963, the man who wanted to be a machine finally built his factory. But this wasn't a studio, it was an experiment in human limits. Imagine a vast, cavernous loft in the heart of Manhattan, every inch of the walls covered in silver foil and industrial spray paint. The air is a thick, dizzying haze of chemical smells and the electric hum of a world that never sleeps. This was the Silver Factory, a place where the sun never shone and the party never ended. Andy sat at the center of this silver web, hidden behind his dark glasses, playing the role of the silent observer. But look closer. He wasn't just watching, he was directing. He realized that the most potent currency in New York wasn't money, it was attention. He surrounded himself with his superstars, the beautiful, the broken, the disinherited heirs, and the outcasts of society. He gave them a stage, and in return, he took everything else. He famously said, "I love it when people use each other." To Andy, human beings were like the cans of soup on his canvases, mass-produced, interchangeable, and disposable. He created a system of total dependency. He fed their egos, he provided a refuge for their vices, and he stood back with his camera to record the inevitable fallout. He was the silent, silver-haired architect of a toxic family, watching as his children pushed themselves to the breaking point for just a few moments in his mechanical light. He didn't need to be cruel with words. His cruelty was his silence. He would set a camera in front of a person and simply walk away, leaving them to crumble under the weight of being watched. He filmed their psychological crises, their most intimate betrayals, and their slow loss of self. He was the inventor of reality-style content decades before it had a name, proving that people would sacrifice their dignity and their peace just for 15 minutes of fame. While the world saw the bright, neon colors of pop art, Andy was obsessing over the tragic. He was a man haunted by the fragility of the body, a fear born in the sickbed of his childhood. He realized that in a consumer society, even tragedy could be turned into a product. He began his disaster series, obsessively enlarging grainy photographs of accidents, the harsh machinery of the state, and the moments where life suddenly flickers out. He understood something terrifying about the modern brain. If you see a disturbing image enough times, you stop feeling the pain behind it. When you see a piercing picture over and over again, he said, it doesn't really have any effect. He was practicing a form of spiritual numbing. He was training himself, and us, to look at catastrophe and see only a pattern of ink on a page. He was the prophet of our digital age, where we scroll past global tragedies with the same blank expression we use for an advertisement. His obsession with the mechanical was tied to a deep-seated fear of the living, breathing body. Andy lived with a paralyzing discomfort regarding the biological reality of being human, the breath, the messy emotions, the inevitable decay. He wanted to turn the people he knew into statues, into silkscreens, into something that wouldn't age or change. He wanted a world of icons, because icons are immortal. But icons don't have souls, and Andy knew the price of that trade. He lived in a state of permanent detachment, a man who preferred his tape recorder to his friends. He once said that he wished he were a machine, because machines don't feel. But as the shadows grew longer in the silver room, even Andy couldn't escape the fact that he was still made of flesh and bone. And the chaos he had spent years documenting was about to walk through his front door and shatter his silence forever. In June 1968, the darkness Andy had cultivated finally turned its teeth on him. A woman from his inner circle, feeling abandoned by the very machine she helped build, walked into the factory and shattered his silence with a weapon. In that moment, the man who wanted to be a machine felt the cold, hard reality of his own fragility. He reached the absolute edge of existence, standing for a moment in the silence of the void before the doctors pulled him back. The survivor who walked out of that hospital was more spectral than ever before. The trauma had turned his detachment into a fortress. The Silver Factory, once a chaotic playground of broken souls, became a locked corporate office. The doors were bolted, and the creative anarchy was replaced by a cold, calculating commercialism. He became a ghost who shopped, a man who documented every cent he spent and every word he heard on his tape recorder, as if trying to prove he still existed by the sheer weight of his archives. He became the man with the empty gaze, the first true celebrity who was famous simply for being famous. He spent his nights in the strobe lights of the 1970s, a silent witness to a decade of excess, always clutching his camera like a shield. He realized before anyone else that the future belonged to the brand, not the person. He turned his own face into a logo, a silver mask that signaled everything and meant nothing. He had finally achieved his ultimate goal. He was no longer a man. He was an object, an icon that couldn't be hurt because there was no longer anyone home. Look around you today. Look at the glowing screens in your palm and the endless stream of curated images that define your reality. This is Andy's world. We have all become workers in his global factory. We curate our lives into time capsules, filtering out the flaws, the sweat, and the private shame that Andy fought so hard to hide. We have traded our authenticity for a 15-minute slice of digital fame, just as he predicted. Andy Warhol showed us that in a world of infinite reproduction, nothing is unique and everything is for sale. He diagnosed the affliction of the modern soul, the desperate need to turn living into archiving and relationships into transactions. He turned himself into a mirror so that we could see our own emptiness, and we rewarded him with the immortality he so desperately craved. The tragedy of Andy Warhol isn't that he was shallow. It's that he was right. He showed us that the surface is all we have left. The curtain is rising on an era of avatars and digital masks, where the person behind a screen has long since vanished. We are all famous now. We are all icons. But as the silver lights fade and the camera stops clicking, ask yourself, is there anything left in the dark? Or have we finally become the products Andy always knew we were?